Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another podcast episode of His Will for Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Sherry Levon Harris, and I have with me this evening Raven M. Harris of Georgia, who will speak on the topic building mode. We hope that you will join us tonight. We'll be right back.
His will for your life with Cherie Harris. This is your weekly Wednesday 7 p.m. podcast. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. Informative, hot topics, testimonies, interviews, along with your weekly guests and more. And now here's your host, Cherie Harris.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Sherry Levon Harris, and we have joining us tonight Raven Harris. How are you, Raven?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for saying yes. So we're going to give you this opportunity to share who you are with our audience who don't know who you are. So we're going to give you that opportunity to share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. So again, I am Raven M. Harris. I am of Southwest Georgia, Americus, Georgia to be exact. And I'm excited to be here. I do a lot of different things, primarily coaching and consulting with individuals, organizations, and schools.
School. Awesome. So you do have your own podcast. You want to tell us about that?
Yes, thank you so much for reminding me to share that. So my podcast is called Reset with Raven, and it is on the foundations of faith, focus, and fortitude. And on Reset with Raven, I interview guests, and we talk about ways that these guests have successfully navigated a reset in career, life, and business. And the podcast was really founded and came from my own story and journey that I'm living out right now of experiencing my own reset. And I won't steal Sherry's thunder because I think we're going to talk more about me having my own reset.
Awesome. You're not stealing my thunder. This is my platform, is your platform. So our topic tonight is building mode. So when you hear building mode as a leader, what are some of the things that come to mind to you? What resonates in you?
What initially comes to mind is foundation. As you are building something, you cannot go up if you don't have that strong foundation. And I'm thinking about my own journey. I shared a little bit with Sherry when we first met about a little over a year ago, resigning from my job and deciding to be an entrepreneur. And that transition from employee to entrepreneur has been wild.
Yes.
I think saying that is just an understatement, and recognizing all of the foundational blocks that have been laid and continue to be laid. And I think there's so much value in recognizing that when you're doing something new, different, and building, there's seasons, there's obstacles, there's disappointment, there's rejection. And for me, and I just came to this, I guess you would call it like revelation in the past few weeks. So this is very fresh, maybe even past few days, that it had to happen. When you think about building, there are some things that I've experienced just in this past year that I was like, okay, you had to go through that. You had to experience that to build and to make something great, so that because you are laying the foundation with certain things, you are anchored, you are rooted now.
Yes.
And had I not gone through some things, I wouldn't have had that rooting.
That's awesome, because it's right on that wave that God has given. So when we think about the pandemic, so in terms of the pandemic, trying to bounce back, trying to get ourselves back together, because we know that life happened, right? So now we're in that building mode process. And I like Matthew 7:24, where it says, everyone then who hears the word of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And I think about how our homes are built on the foundation, how our lives are built on a foundation. And if we don't have a sturdy foundation, then of course our lives going to be in shambles. And so when I look at that scripture, I think about, how we have our foundation. So if we own a home, or we're in the building, or we see cracks, or things like that, it's not that the pavement cracked, it's because the foundation has shifted. And that's what happens in our lives. Things shift. And so it causes us now to be in a mode where now we have to build on that, right? So we have to fix the foundation. And for us, that's using wisdom. And the foundation is God's word, which is that knowledge that we need to apply to our lives to stop building all over again. And so when I think about that, I have a question. What are some practical steps to take when rebuilding?
I think one of the biggest things is recognition
Mhm,
that you are in a building phase, a recognition of which season you're in.
mhm,
So that was the first thing that I had to do, because
mhm.
I think sometimes we want something overnight.
Yes.
We
Yes.
want, oh, well, why isn't the house up
Mhm,
tomorrow? Like, I'm ready to move in now.
mhm.
So knowing that there's different components, you need your architect, you need your interior designer, your plumber,
Yes.
your electrician, all those different things. So
Right.
recognizing
Mhm,
which season you're in, recognizing where you are in the building phase. And
mhm,
then when it comes to practicality, I think for me, it's been creating a plan. Like,
mhm,
okay, well, and the same thing you have with, like, when it comes to architecture, creating the plan of what does this look like?
mhm.
And I say that with a bit of caution, because just because you have a plan, life doesn't go as you plan. So being
Absolutely.
nimble and being flexible
Mhm,
along that pathway goes back to being, like, hey, I have this idea in my head of what it should look like,
mhm.
that being open to receiving if someone adds feedback, or if someone adds, hey, based on my professional opinion, I've been in the business 20 years and I'm an electrician, you should do it this way. And
Mhm.
I think for me, that's been a very challenging thing, because similar to, I would say probably for many people,
Mhm.
we had how we thought life should go, or how we think, September should go, September 2021, or we should be out of this by now.
Right.
So when things don't go as planned,
Right.
being able to receive and being open to receiving something that's different, and it may even be better. So being
Mhm.
open to receiving. And then I also think there's an element of trusting the process. So if
Mm.
you hire someone who is building your home, and you
Mhm.
know that this person is of high credibility and has done this before, just because when they start, you don't see the full house and it doesn't look like what, well, this isn't like
Yes.
the picture yet,
Yes.
continue to trust the process. So
Yes.
that's been the building phase that even that I'm experiencing right now.
Awesome. So what's your greatest hindrance in rebuilding?
I would say fear of failure.
Yeah.
When you're rebuilding, it's like, oh, I'm starting over again.
Mhm.
Oh, I gotta do something from a different approach. And I literally had to reshape, reset the way I look at things, and question.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Is it that I'm rebuilding, or is it that I'm starting from a different space with new knowledge, new information, new supplies? Because I remember thinking like I'm starting over. Is
Mm.
it that? Question that. And I think that's one of the things that we have to do when we have thoughts that feel like maybe it's a negative. Maybe we've looked at rebuilding as negative. Maybe real rebuilding is not negative, and maybe it's not rebuilding. Maybe it's creating something new.
And that's very interesting because we do take it as something negative. But I always think about what the enemy meant for evil, God means it for good,
Mm.
right? And so we have to look at it, and that's where we have to go back and trust the process. Trust that God knows what He's doing. He says He knows the plans that He has for us, right? Just because we haven't caught up to His plan doesn't mean that He doesn't know what He's doing. Um, but I just think that we have to realize that in order to rebuild, that foundation needs to stay together. And so that foundation of us and the Word of God and the knowledge of God's Word and keeping that relationship with Him going.
I think that's good. And I think I heard something just the other day that
Mm-hmm.
it hit me in
Mm-hmm.
terms of also too, in terms of your community,
Mm-hmm.
like who and what you allow to pour into you as you're going through transition or change or reset or pivoting or building.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what she said was there's a difference between dirt and soil. So
Whoa.
know where you're planting, know where you're building, know
Mm-hmm.
what's around you, know what's in your environment. And I was like, "Ooh, that hit me hard."
That's deep. Because when I think about dirt, I think of something dry. But when I think about soil, I think of something moist, something that's nurturing, something that will cause something to grow, right? So when I
Mhm.
think of dirt, I'm just thinking a little dry patch in your yard or something dry and cracked. That's what I visualize when I see that. When I heard that, that's what I see. So that's what I visualize. So that's good. I have to write that down. I may need that when I minister somewhere. So tell us about your podcast Reset. What caused you to get to that place where you wanted to do a podcast called Reset?
So that goes back to my journey in terms of finding myself at a place where I needed to reset.
Mm-hmm.
So last year, I was working in a critical illness recovery hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and I, at the time, was the interim CEO. So some people may say, "Oh, wow, you have the dream job. You're successful, and you've done this at a fairly young age."
Mm-hmm.
And I remember still feeling empty, feeling like this is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's something different. There's
Wow.
something bigger.
Wow.
And it was like success on paper and emptiness on the inside. And I was like, this can't be how I'm supposed to be living. It can't be like I'm thinking about like the joy of the Lord, and this feels like back to about like the dirt, dry. And I was like, this is not it. And it really took being in that environment
Mm-hmm.
and seeing so much death
Mm.
to remind me of my own life and to remind me of that I have so much to do in this world and to be impactful. And I felt like I was playing small, living small,
Mm-hmm.
and not being all that I was
Mm.
like purpose to do. And
Mm-hmm.
a friend shared with me this the other day. We were talking about, you hear online people saying thriving and not surviving. And I was like, no, I think you could be thriving and still feel like something's missing. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, there was that lack of fulfillment, that lack of like, this is what I was like born to do. And I'm in
Mm.
this career and I'm like, I know this is not how this should feel. I know that this is not how I should like dread going each and every day to my career. And I just hit a point, and it was on my birthday.
Oh, wow.
It was on my birthday where I decided I had to reset. I said, God has blessed you with
Mhm,
another year of life. What will you do with it? This
mhm,
pandemic, like life has always been uncertain,
mhm,
not promised, the whole 9 yards. But if I ever felt it and saw it before, like I'd
mhm.
never seen it like this before. I feel like God had been giving me signs. But this, when I tell you this was a billboard for me to see
Wow.
so many people, especially my age. There was a patient
Yeah.
that was my age, looked like me, and I remember like that did something to me.
Mm,
It gave me a fire and an urgency to say, Raven, you have to change. You
wow.
have to change. You have to pivot. You have to have your own reset.
Mm, wow.
And that is where I decided to resign from my job. And when it came to the podcast, I had zero plans of creating a podcast, but I have like I would call it like a intellectual curiosity. Like
Mhm.
I just love asking people questions. It's this so interesting. Like, how did you do this? How did you get
Yeah.
here? What
Yes.
happened here? And I was sharing this with some. Let me tell you how God works. I was sharing this with somebody who I had not seen or spoken to
Mm,
in about, I think, 4 years.
wow.
I commented on their Instagram, and they
Mhm,
were like, oh, over the holidays in December 2020. And they're like, hey, what are you up to in the world? Where's life taking you?
mhm.
And we were like, hey, let's just do like a Zoom call because everybody's Zooming. And we
Wow.
did a Zoom call, and she placed it on my heart. I talked about like I wanted to do more speaking.
Mhm,
And she was like, this conversation that we just had, people
mhm,
would love to hear more and more conversations like this. It's real, it's genuine, like the
mhm.
whole 9 yards. And I was
Right.
like, yeah, but I don't like the tech, or I don't know tech. I'm like, I'm not tech savvy, all this other stuff. And she was like, that sounds like an excuse.
Mhm.
Pick a date and we're gonna start. I didn't even have a name yet. She's like, pick a date
Wow.
and we're gonna start. And
Wow.
literally, I'm so grateful for her because she literally kicked off the reset with Raven. And I literally was sitting somewhere, and I call it, I get these downloads from God in the meantime of the date that we chose, and I came up with reset. And then of course my name is
Wow.
Raven. So I like the
Yeah.
alliteration that's how
Right.
it's born. We were both talking about we were at home during the holidays, and we were going through so many personal and professional changes.
Mm.
It was a reset. We've reset the way like we're doing life. We reset the way we see ourselves. We reset how we want to leave legacy and leave impact and
Right.
influence on
Mhm.
people. And that's how it came about. And I was just like, and I never thought that I would love podcasting as much as I do.
Well, I don't. Um, I do it because I'm being obedient, but I'm an introvert. I really don't like to be in front of people, but here I am, right? To go back to when we were talking about dirt, and I believe you said soil. Both dirt and soil are necessary, right? So, how do you choose?
Mm. I don't when it comes to choosing,
Mm-hmm.
you have to know like what first of all, I think you have to be able to differentiate. There comes a time when you talked about a dry patch, and then also when I think about soil, I think of as you mentioned, something rich, something nurturing. And in terms of choosing, I think that it depends on where you are in your maturity level in terms of your, whether that be your personal maturity, professional maturity,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual maturity, to recognize that you should entertain soil. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that maybe your ministry or calling is to support and enrich the dirt,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that you have to know what you allow to pour inside of you, what you allow to be around you on a consistent basis, and
Absolutely.
feed you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it comes from a maturity level to know, like, hey, in this season of my life or where I am now, like as Les Brown says, OQP, only quality people.
Mhm.
Then
Right. That's interesting. You was talking about who we're around, and I couldn't figure out why. I'll purchase some avocados, and I've also purchased lemon, and I will put them in like the same dish on the counter. Where you put your fruits and your vegetables, and one will become rotten. And then I don't know if it was because the mix with the lemon, the acid from that. I don't know what is causing it, but then it will cause all of the fruit and vegetables to become rotten. So that one now caused all the others that was surrounded by it to now have to be thrown away. And I kept saying, wow, that is so important, right? So when we think about the soil, we think about the dirt, and we're thinking about being together, how when God says the wheat and the tears will grow together and he'll do the separating, even though we're all in the same bowl or the same patch, if you will, God's going to do the separating. Because sometimes we don't even know when we're around something that's affecting us. Right. My mother used to tell me as we were younger, birds of a feather flock together. And so when you're around something, you begin to take on those other people's characteristics and not even realize it. Like if you go to another country and you stay there long enough, all of a sudden you speaking like them. If you're in the South, you're going to start talking Southern. If you go to the UK, you're going to end up speaking like them as well. So it plays an important role who we are around, especially in a building mode. Because when we think of something growing, if it's not nurtured and taken care of as it's growing, then it's not going to grow properly.
I
And,
think that
and that's important in our building mode.
I was
Yeah.
going to say it's a good point when you thinking about like who you're around and who you share like your dreams and ideas and goals and visions with, because as you said, some people may not have your best interests in mind, and even those that may be well intended, because they don't have the vision,
Mhm.
they may poo-poo on your ideas and poo-poo on what you're doing as you're building as well. So
Mhm. Yeah. And that's why we have to make sure that the foundation is secure. And so that foundation is simply that relationship and being connected to God. That's our foundation. And if we lose sight of that, then of course someone can come and stifle or hinder our building mode. Because we're all in a building mode. We're in a pandemic, but we're not in a pandemic, right? So we have some still going on about life as if we're not in a pandemic, and then those who are in a pandemic. But I believe this pandemic have birthed a lot of things, and so many of us are in a building mode. And so, how do we stay in that place when things around us are chaotic?
how do you block out the noise?
Yeah,
Or
pretty much.
I'm still
Gotta
working
stay
on
focused.
that. I don't know that I have the answer. What I am actively doing right now is uh, praying more,
Mhm,
journaling more.
mhm,
Um, with so much chaos, and I would even consider, I use the term like world drama.
mm,
I think it's been very helpful for me
mhm,
to try to clear my thoughts on paper, to just organize them.
mhm,
And it's as my dad says, better out than in. So just putting them on paper has been very helpful for me. And um, even going back to look at some of the things
mhm,
I wrote, and I'm finding like, oh, okay, do you still
mhm,
even agree with that? Or is
mm,
there truth in that? Or was
mhm.
that just your emotions speaking at that time?
Wow.
Um, and are you making assumptions? Are you jumping to conclusions?
Mhm,
That's been one of the things for me to just try to organize my thoughts because
Mhm.
we have so many outside influences, with
Yes.
the social media, the regular media, people, friends, family. So
Yes.
trying to find a quiet space and quiet time to block out all that's going on
Mhm.
outside of us, and then
Mhm.
maybe journal and putting it in one place that we're feeling internally. That's been something that I'm actively working on, but definitely having so many outside influences, it can be challenging to know, like, don't listen to that, or limit your time or exposure to certain things. That's another thing that I've actively done, like a limited TV or limited social media, just to make sure that I'm not getting over consumed with all that is happening um, outside.
Okay, that's great. So, as a coach and counseling, um, how do you um, put your clients, if you will, in a place where um, they're now focusing on bettering themselves than opposed to being complacent? Because a lot of times we get complacent when things are not going our way. So, by age this, I should have been doing that and I'm not. So now I'm just going to give up and I'm just not going to do anything. And so we become complacent. And we know if we're complacent too long, if we stay in that place, then nothing gets done. And so, how do you encourage them to even keep building on that? As I'm saying building, I don't know why I keep seeing Legos, and so I'm just seeing
Like the building
started
blocks.
starting small and just keep piling on, and before you know it, we realize that we're growing and we're in a better place. But how do you get one there who have now felt like they have the spirit of complacency?
Hmm. So it's very interesting. I had a talk yesterday
Mm-hmm.
with a college, and we were talking about that, and it was entitled "Creating a Work-Life Rhythm."
Mm.
And what I left them with is, "And the beat goes on. This
And the
too
beat
shall
goes
pass."
on.
Yeah, this too shall pass. So when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to like hard times and difficult seasons,
Mm-hmm.
believing that this too shall pass. This is not
Mm-hmm.
here to stay. And I shared with them something my coach shared with me when I started
Mm-hmm.
Activate the Dream. Coaching and consulting company, was that you've already jumped out of the boat.
Mm.
This is not the time to determine whether or not you will sink or swim. You will swim.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to life, we're already here. Like you're here, you're living, you're breathing, you're blessed to
Mm-hmm.
be here today.
Right. Absolutely.
So you have to make the decision that I will swim no matter how strong the tide, no matter what is coming at me. And also to really getting back in alignment with, and you hear start with the why.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing this? why
Mm-hmm.
why do you go to work? Why do you go to college? Why do you wake up every day? I think when we find that, goes back to like, what am I here and what am I purpose to do? When you're doing what you're purpose to do,
Mm-hmm.
I believe you can ignore, like, oh, I really don't feel like it today,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm tired, because it gives you that push through. There
Mm-hmm.
are many a days I showed up and I'd rather be 5 million other places, or I'm just exhausted.
Yeah.
But I made this commitment,
Mm-hmm.
and the commitment is, it's bigger than my present feelings. So
Mm.
when it comes to the complacency, and you're thinking about, like, are you doing this for your family?
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing this for legacy? Are you doing it today because your son or daughter needs food on the table?
Mm.
It's different, and it may change throughout your life, but having a big enough why.
Mm-hmm.
Are
Yes.
you doing this to because as you said earlier, out of obedience.
Mm-hmm.
Having a big enough why, I think, can move us out of complacency.
Right.
So, and I think a lot of people, they say they know their why, but do you really know your why? Is it because you want to make sure you're able to see your daughter smile every day? Is it because, you know what, I believe that I am on this earth, this planet for this?
Mm.
This is who I am. I do this. This is a part
Yeah.
of my DNA. So whether
Mm-hmm.
or not I'm not really feeling it today, or I need a nap, I have a headache, I have a migraine, I'm gonna push through because it's bigger than me, and the change or the impact that I can have, that I will make, it's bigger than me. So I feel like that goes back to more of that servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you are able to anchor in that and be rooted in
Mm-hmm.
that, that can help you move past the complacency, or move past like, I today just I because I've had days, today just ain't it, but I'm gonna push through.
Right. So you're saying that the driving force is our why. So
Mhm.
we have to know why we're doing it.
Exactly.
Because times are going to get hard. It's going to be tough. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but they don't realize that there's hard work in doing so. There's no days off, really. There's no sleep, if you will. There's just constant grinding, um, because, as you said, the beat goes on. So we got to keep going, you know, because this is our brand. This is our why. We're doing something, and usually when the why is because God has given you that why, um, it's more bearable, if you will, that you can continue on in that journey of building because God is behind it. Like I take this podcast each week, I try to talk myself into not doing it, not booking anyone, put on a replay, and let that air. And God is like, no. As a matter of fact, here's somebody I want to be on your next podcast. And so now I find myself. Um, he has become my why I do this. My why is simply because I want to honor him. I want to be obedient to him. And because of my obedience, he gives me the strength to do it week after week, to be in front of people I don't even know who's watching me, right? And who's going to look at the replay. But our why have to be big enough for us to say, against all odds, here I am, and I'm in building mode. I put on a post today about sometimes it's okay not to respond to an email or a phone call or a text message, because when you're in building mode, or when you're in a mode where God is shaping you, you don't have time for outside chatter and clutter and chaos. It's a building mode. When you're building, you're focused. You're not taking many breaks. You're not looking what's around you. You're constantly building. And I don't know why I'm seeing construction workers, and I'm just seeing people just working where they don't have time to do anything else but to constantly build, and that's where we are. And so when you're so I have here as a question, um, who bears the burden of rebuilding broken relationships? So let's talk about relationships. So we know that when we're in a relationship with God, it's usually us who moves out of the way. So who bears the burden of a broken relationship in terms of business, in terms of you being a leader and you having your clients, with you coaching, with your counseling, and those type of relationships?
And rebuilding the relationship. Um, I like to be a person that takes ownership and what I'm doing, where I'm working. And I think it's a meeting of the minds. It's a coming to the table. I think also to recognizing, for me, even I was sharing with you right before we started, like I'm looking forward to watching the replay so I can see areas, when I'm speaking and connecting with people, what are some areas for improvement or opportunities for improvement? I think coming to the table when there is a broken relationship and being open for feedback. That is, for me, has been like a huge area of growth, because thinking about Erica Badu, we're sensitive about our stuff. We'll use the term stuff. That's and I think that when you are a business owner or you're doing something that is customer facing, it can be challenging to receive critique. It can be challenging when someone says, hey, this was not the level of service or the experience that I anticipated or I expected or that I require. For me, it's being open to the conversation and listening and listening to understand and not listening to necessarily respond. And also too saying, well, thank you so much for that perspective, or thank you for bringing that to my attention. And as an owner and we're in a relationship, it would be, well, how can we correct this, or how can we meet your needs? And that depends on that's a situational thing, because depending on the relationship, the scope of the work, so many different variables. Maybe there isn't a way. Maybe at this point we're just at a crossroads and this is not a great working relationship. But I think relationships are important. So listening for the information and listening to try to understand that person's point of view. And then maybe you have to say, well, thank you for that. Can I take a day or two and get back with you? I just need to process that. And that's been another big thing for me too. Sometimes we want to respond very quickly, but if you respond out of emotion or offense, then that may not go well either. So I think it really depends on the situation. But I think as an owner or a leader, you have to take some ownership in what transpired, whether or not you were wrong, right, and maybe there was no wrong or right party. Maybe that was how each person perceived it. So I think gathering information for me is the way I approach that, and then deciding, okay, what would be the most equitable way to move forward, and getting the feedback and information from the other parties.
Yeah, that is important, and taking ownership. I remember, I'm going to get on to team building. So I remember being in undergrad, and we had group projects.
Oh,
I hated group projects, but I had one professor who shed light on how to manage and work in a group setting. Because you sometimes you feel like one is doing the bulk of the work, and this one's not doing anything, and then if we all get an A, this person who did nothing gets an A. But if we get an F, we all get an F, even though it was a joint effort. And so she drew on the board a pie and a circle, and she made it pie, and she started putting different percentages. So everybody think it should be 50-50, right? And she was like, the one who is not good in research, the one who isn't good in writing or anything, they're good at speaking. And they can only give you the 2%, but they do that 2% of speaking well. There's someone who's going to do research well, and that's 30-40%, right? And then you have one who knows how to take all the information and put it together in essay form. And so then there's another percentage. And when she put it like that, it made me think, wow, that's true. What I do in my 25% is still helpful. And once we realize what a person can give, what percentage they can give in something, that will help build that team to be in a builder mode. And I think that's very important, even in the body of Christ. If we realize what we can do, that we're not wearing all the hats, right? So I want to be the deacon. I want to be the trustee. I want to be in charge of this. I want to be the president of that. And things go slacking because we're not built for that. One, we're not built for all of it. And then one, we're not built in that area. We don't have any skill in that area. Just because you volunteered or you've been chosen, say, no, I can't do that. And I think that will help in the building mode process. Yeah. Somebody is saying hey to you. Hey, Paula.
Hey, Paula.
Yeah. And there's Lauren.
Lauren, hey.
So, as I was talking about that, what are some of the techniques that you use in a building mode and that you share with your clients and those who reach out to you in your business? Name your business.
Activate the dream.
Yes. And what is Activate the Dream?
As you were talking about team members, I think that one of the things that I work with people on is, and it's just kind of how I just exist in the world. So what I do is order, structure, and systems. And when you talked about knowing where people are great at, that is what I believe has really helped me to be able to progress in my career, is seeing the amazingness of a particular person in a certain area. So my background was in healthcare. And I remember when I work alongside nurses, there would be one nurse, she's amazing at being a charge nurse, very organized, made sure that the shift ran smoothly. There were other people that were very strong clinically. So recognizing where people's strengths are and how to utilize that for the team's advantage, that is something that I think is powerful. Because another thing, when you were talking about different areas to serve in the church, I thought about, I used to be in the gospel choir when I was in college, and I am nobody's lead singer at all. But I can blend, though. I'm an alto. I can blend. I can hear well, but I'm nobody's lead singer. So knowing my role, knowing my place, like I know where I, get in where you fit in. I knew where I fit in the choir, and I think that is super important. And when it comes to working with clients within Activate the Dream, it's helping people to see what are their gifts and talents. And I'm so fortunate that I've had mentorship and coaches who have helped me see that with me, because I remember there's some things that I just did so easily. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, well, yeah. And they're like, you do realize that, getting on stage in front of like 10,000 people. I did something at one of my previous employers, and they were like, other people would be, shaky hands, sweaty palms, and you got up there and you rocked it. I was like, this is what I do. I was getting energy from that. Yeah. So recognizing that also too, like, I love to like affirm people and encourage people and uplift people. And they were like, you do realize that's why everybody wants to be on like your team. You don't have any vacancies in your team member or staffing pool. Like, that's, people are like, oh, they're going to have a great time because Raven makes you feel good. And I believe, feel good, you can do good work or do great work. And those are things that I didn't think anything of. I just was like, people were like, well, why do you have such high employee engagement? And I was like, we have a great team. And I didn't recognize there were some things that just came naturally to me that help really build a team and help people feel motivated and inspired to come to work every day. So what I do with people is helping them uncover or discover what those things are. And that's through different practices, activities, talking, just in conversation, and understanding like, hey, what makes them tick? What are they really interested in? What are their heart's desires? What are some of their talents and gifts? And it takes time. It's a process, but we work together to really figure out what those things are and what that looks like in terms of your profession or your career or what you do daily, or maybe it's the way you in different ways that you volunteer, but how you have impact in the world.
I think that's very important. That was going to be one of my questions, but you kind of covered it as you continued on to speak, is about recognizing the gift or the talent in others who may not recognize it in themselves, especially if they come from an environment who who didn't nurture that or accept it or acknowledge it, right? And so when you, as a leader, see that in someone else, like my pastor, I love him because he would push. And I realized he was a little harder on me because I was a little slowful. As a matter of fact, at one point he did call me slowful. But that pushed me, and he knew exactly how to do it, because if he was babying me or so, I probably wouldn't be where I am now, in my call and in leadership role. I think it's very important that we recognize the gift and we nurture them along, and even as well as tell them, nope, this isn't your area. You're doing it, and I know you're filling in, and you're doing great, but move over, because now someone who can really do that assignment is here, and then you move on. But I think that's important as well, that we recognize the gift in others. I realize when I'm speaking to my son face to face, like I'm speaking to you, sometimes he don't quite get it, right? And so I was reading something, and so now I speak to him in his REM sleep. So after he's going to bed, in another 2 hours, when he's in that sleep where he's still kind of conscious, but he's asleep, he can hear me. And I recognize that he hears it because how he responds the next day. And so feeding him affirmations and encouraging him, and that sleep time, is speaking to his conscious, right? And now he's able to act upon that, and I'm seeing progress in that, which is really good, because I kid you not, while I'm speaking to him while he's awake, he doesn't get it. But those are the times where I've been speaking to him. And so that's been helping in that progress, and helping him to recognize what's in him, because he was never told that he's intelligent. He's never was told those things. And so now when he gets up, he's smiling as if he remembers me talking to him. And so he hears that voice. And so it's said when you speak to them in their REM sleep, it has to be in a soft, calming voice. And so I speak to him in a soft, calm voice so that he can hear. We have some things here. We have a question. What was the turning point in your life that led you to your first reset, Raven?
The first reset, I would say, would be when I was in college. The first reset, I thought I wanted to be a physician, and I was pre-med.
Oh, wow.
And I did an internship or an apprenticeship. We would get matched for the students that were pre-med, and I was a biological sciences major. And I got matched with a podiatrist, and I was like, oh, like I was so upset. I was like, I want to do real medicine. And it happened to be one of the most phenomenal experiences. This podiatrist, this physician, was so compassionate, loved what he did, and really shared with me the understanding that healthcare was also a business, and that he wished he would have known how to manage his practice, and he would have had more business information and business knowledge about being an independent physician. And he shaped my healthcare administration journey, because after being in that apprenticeship with him, I decided I didn't want to be pre-med anymore. And I decided I wanted to marry my interests of healthcare and business together and pursue a healthcare administration career. So that was a very unexpected reset, but I'm so grateful for it because I know now that, especially after being in healthcare nearly a decade and working in emergency rooms, physicians' offices, hospitals, I know for sure that being a physician was not for me. And working alongside physicians daily, I know that that wasn't for me. And I may have taken a path that was not right for me had I not had that exposure and that experience from the foot doctor.
Exactly. We have another question for you. Actually, it's a two-part question. At what point in your reset did you know that you were following the plan of God? And what was your reassurance that you were making the right decision?
One of the things that happened was I remember when I first started posting on social media, and I had someone, again, it's like people come out of the blue that I had not talked to since undergrad senior year. So that was what, 2013. So in 8 years. And they messaged me, and I didn't know anything about their faith, whether or not they were spiritual, religious. I didn't know anything about that. And they sent me a message that said, I just want to let you know that what you've been posting has blessed me and is making me think about my own faith and my walk with God. And I was like, wait, what?
Yes.
That was for me, it felt out of the blue, but it wasn't, because God knew that I needed that. And what I'm doing, everyone is not called to, like, I would call, I guess, say, formal ministry. And I believe that through my speaking, my podcast, my Activate the Dream, some of my consulting, that people will see that in me, will see the God in me, will see, God's hand on me. But I don't necessarily post very regularly, scriptures or things like that, so that someone saw that and felt that. She said, and I forgot to say also too, I noticed a change in you.
Wow.
And she doesn't know that, but the day that I got that message, I needed that. I was feeling kind of weary. I was feeling frustrated. I was like, why am I doing this? Is this making a difference? And I just needed that on that day. And it gave me that, it affirmed me. It gave me that reassurance that I needed in that moment. And I think an additional to that was really just praying and knowing, like, he won't leave me out here. Like, as I mentioned about, you've already jumped out of the boat. Like, Lauren and I, we had this conversation before. He's never failed me. God is consistent. He may not do things my time frame, when I want it, how I planned it, but he's never failed me. He's never left me out. He's never left me hanging. Why would he start now? And that's been my reassurance. So that was a great question.
And that's your why.
Yeah.
Because he's never failed you. That's good. And as you were talking, I was thinking about your purpose, because you said the formal ministry, and sometimes being in that place that you were, because some people are so intellectual, you can't really minister to them because they have all the answers. But when you come in the way that you did and you just spoke, it resonated with them. Right? There's something that you said that inspired them. And I believe that we all have a purpose and a call on our lives, to win some. Like, I can win some that you can't, and you can win some that I can't, because people are relatable to anybody that reminds them of themselves or something that they have a connection with, right? And so I think that's important, even if someone was an alcoholic and another person is a alcoholic, they can minister to that person. Me not being an alcoholic will kind of be a struggle, but I believe God will, if need be, if I was the only person there at that time, God would use it. But I think it's important that we're kind of flexible in how God wants to use us, and then understand that we're all not on the same level where God can use us any way he chooses, right? So you didn't have to give out scriptures for this person to inbox you or to call you or whatever they did. But it's important that we are just available at that time. But I have no more questions. This has been some great dialogue. I thank you for being a guest on tonight. As we're coming to a close, if you guys have any other questions for Miss Raven, you may do so at this time. Miss Raven is being very modest in what she does. And so I'm going to let that slide this time. But I will, I wish that you would just share because you are a millennial, you're a young woman. You want to say your age or no?
Sure. I'm grateful. I'm 30 years old.
Yes. So this
30
young
years
woman,
young. No.
30 years young. This young woman has been a CEO and now working for herself as the CEO and not for someone else. So has your own business and you're doing something that you enjoy because God never gives us anything that we're not going to enjoy in doing it, right? So even if he calls us to something we feel that we can't do, there's going to be some joy in that thing as we do it. We have a question. Wait a minute. This if God is for you, no one can be against you, including yourself. That's right, Lauren. Paula says, what is your definition of purpose and what do you say to people who say they don't know how to find their purpose? Very good.
Oh, that's a great question.
It is.
I think that purpose is why you're here. Why, and it's how God reveals to you you're here. When someone says they don't know how to find their purpose, I think that that's a journey and it's discovered or revealed to us over time. And oftentimes it's, someone told me just last week, how are you going to be an overcomer without having something to overcome?
Ooh.
How are you going to have a testimony without having the test? So when it comes to that purpose, I think it's why you're here and the impact that you're supposed to be making. And I believe that when you are in your purpose, there's a joy unexplainable. And I believe there's a fulfillment, there's a peace. However, I think that we have to be open. I believe life, it's not life, it's God is giving us clues all along the way. And he even gives us billboards, but will you pay attention? And in terms of discovering that purpose, I believe it's being very aware, locked into the word and aware of what's happening, aware of what are you able to do, as I talked about earlier, with ease, with grace. And what is that lights you up, that makes you feel like, oh, that's why. But I believe it's a journey. And so to answer your question, it's why you still inhale and exhale, because there's something left for you to do on this earth, on this planet. And how do you recognize what it is? I think that's being locked into the word and being open to receiving and seeing all of the billboards that happen along the way.
That's a perfect answer. I often say that as long as we're still breathing and we get up in the morning, we still have a work to do, or our purpose hasn't been fulfilled yet. The reason why you breathe. I love it. Yes. I absolutely love the detailed response. Thank you, Raven. Oh, they're giving you so much.
Those are my people. I love you, Paula and Lauren, my people.
Yes, Paula is a sweetheart. Yes, and Lauren is my buddy, although he acted like he didn't know who I was when I texted him. Yep, I put you out there, Lauren. Yeah, so I thank you for this episode of the building mode. We covered a lot of different things. And I wanted you on as a millennial because it seems like you guys are taking over, and maybe you can give us the older ones a little direction because you guys are seeing what's work. I love the fact that you guys are innovators and that you work together in building and how you support one another. I can see different things that the millennials are doing, and all the millennials get on board and they're like, yes, go supporting. The in-between and my age is like, I don't want them to get ahead of me, but I realize that you guys are a different breed and that you are in this building mode and you're going forward. That's my sister, Raven Michelle. Yes. So you have any closing words that you would like to share, say, that's maybe related to our topic, may not be something that you just led to share?
I'm really just happy to be here and happy to have this conversation and grateful that you allowed me on your platform tonight. And thank you so much also too for making me think. One of the things I love about conversations and dialogue like this is to even open up my thought process to how I see things or my perspective or different vantage points. So I'm very grateful for the conversation and thank you for having this space to have conversations like this.
Thank you. I enjoyed you. And as Paula in my head, I was thinking this, and so she just said it. We should have you on one of our panel discussions, and that will come soon. I would love to have you on as a guest when we do a panel discussion. I think you'll be a great fit. So thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you. Stay tuned. Next week, actually not stay tuned, but come back next week. There will be an all-man panel. And I think their topic is, what is their topic? Forgot their topic. The different seasons of a man. That's what their topic is. The different seasons of a man. If you have any questions, ladies, that you would like to ask these men, you can email me at info@hiswillforyourlife.com. You can call us, text us at 757-607-4490 to get these questions in. We have some interesting questions for them. Of course, they don't know what they are. So this should be a great conversation. What is she saying? I'm so inspired by Raven. Oh, she's so sweet. So join us next week, you guys, for the male panel. And then I'm just going to say this now. Then next week, the next month, October 6th, mark your calendar. We have a heavy topic. You guys were looking for hot topics, but I think the Word of God is a hot topic. So we have fornication, forgiveness, and infidelity. Is our topic for October 6th. So mark your calendar. Be back here on Wednesday at 7 p.m. God bless you all and have a good night.
Please join Cherie and her special guest again next week for another riveting and informative segment of His Will for Your Life podcast.